Hello E46 do-it-yourselfers. Today I'm going to show you how to rebuild the rear brake caliper on a 2005 330ci. What you see on the table here are the tools and supplies that you will need to accomplish this task. The part is about 26 bucks for the rebuild kit, and unfortunately the rear ones are really hard to come by. But if you can get one, this job is fairly easy for anyone that has basic automotive skills, a bit of confidence, and some time to get it done. In addition, you're also going to need an air source to force the piston out of the caliper. What you see here are three common tools that most people have in their garage. I will demonstrate each of the three and show you which one is the best choice for that job. Alright, let's get started. As you know from my first video, the first step of any do-it-yourself project on your BMW is to clean things up a little bit. This car participated in an autocross yesterday, and under the hood is quite filthy. So we're going to clean up over here in the areas that we're going to work on. Your ECU is behind here. This is your brake reservoir, brake fluid reservoir, which you need to clean the cap. It even says so right on the top before you open it. So that's what we're going to do. This looks good. Let's inspect the sock mod. That might need some maintenance. We might have to do another video on that at another time. Alright, so the next step is to seal up the brake fluid reservoir cap. The reason you want to do this is because this cap is vented, and if you were to take off the brake line at the caliper, which you need to do because you have to work with the caliper on your bench to rebuild it, you would potentially drain the fluid out of the reservoir and onto the floor of your garage. So a racer friend of mine gave me this tip, is to use plastic wrap to seal up the reservoir fill hole, creating a vacuum so that when you do pull the brake line off, only a few drips will come out at the back of the car. So to do this, I removed the stock cap, which has the level sensor connected to it, and as you can see, it would be pretty difficult to kind of put this on there with a bunch of cellophane on it, make a nice seal. So what I do is I use the brake bleeder attachment that came with my bleeder and a double layer of cellophane to seal up this hole. So I put the cellophane over the cap area like this, and then carefully thread the cap on. I say carefully because you want to make sure that you don't tear it, because if you tear it, then you're not going to get a vacuum. You're not going to seal it tightly to produce a vacuum. That's pretty much it. Now that that's all sealed up, when I pull the brake line off the caliper in the back, only a few drips will come out and we'll be good to go for as long as we have it off. Alright, so I've completely removed the caliper from the car and I have the brake pads off. This is the driver's side rear. This brake caliper has about 85,000 miles on it and 40 some odd track days and tons of autocrosses, and led a pretty hard life. A number of years ago I removed them and I painted them black. That seems to be holding up okay, I guess. I did buy another kit that I want to paint these, but I'm kind of in a hurry to get this back on, so I'm going to do that when they're on the car. Let me show you the reason that I'm rebuilding these. This is the dust boot from one of my front calipers, and this is what it looked like when I pulled it off. It's dry, it's brittle, it's cracked. It's just generally pretty nasty. So if your car has, a lot of miles on it, this is something you might want to look into, having done or doing yourself. The front kits are about 15 bucks, I think, and the rear kits are 26 bucks, and I'm really not sure why, but the rear kits are really hard to get a hold of. Nobody really has them in stock. No dealers had them. I got mine from Turner Motorsports in New Jersey, and I think when I ordered the replacement rear kit, it was the last one they had in stock. Alright, so I said I was going to demonstrate the three different air sources to get the piston out, which is the next step in this process. So let me get those organized and we'll do that next. Okay, on to the air sources. So I showed you three. compressed air out of a compressor, dust off the original compressed gas duster, and a leaf blower. So I've already done this on 3 other calipers, so I know which one works best, but to be quite honest, I've only tried compressed air out of my compressor, so I'm interested to see if these other options even work. So first we're going to try the dust off duster. You want to put a block of wood in here to prevent the piston from pushing out and shooting out too far. So the idea here is you put a little air pressure in the hose and it will force the piston out, then you can pull it out and work on it. So I'm going to try this. Also remember, you should be wearing safety gloves. These are nitro gloves, but they're really thick, and all these harsh chemicals that I use don't break through this glove. Also make sure you have eye protection. So to do this, I'm going to stick the air hose down in the hole here if I can, and give it a little pull and see what happens. Yeah, clearly not ideal. There isn't enough pressure here. That didn't even do anything. So next we'll try the leaf blower and see how that does. Mine is I don't know, 170 miles per hour or something like that. So let's see how that does. Alright, well that didn't seem to work too well either, so I'm going to go with the method I know that works best. And that's compressed air out of your compressor. So, I have one of these doohickey attachments on here. It's I'm not sure what you call it, but it's got a rubber nose on it, a trigger to pull, and this is useful for blowing things off and dust and dirt and whatnot in other places, but this is going to work well. So I have it set, mine is set to like 135 psi, which is way too much, but I use air tools with it and that's the way it is. So what you'll do is you'll just you'll be careful with this and just pull the trigger just a little bit, and you'll notice the piston push out. So you saw it, you heard it, and the block of wood caught it from going too far. Now, as you can see, my dust boot on this one is also torn, which allows schmutz and other kind of gunk to get in there. So there you go. So this is what the piston looks like. My dust boot was all cracked and nasty. Here's what it looks like inside. Next step is to take the rest of the dust boot off and get it cleaned up. Here we go. Alright, so apparently there's a metal ring in here. I don't remember for the other one I did. So that's the first step, get the outer boot off, and then there's an inner seal in here. And the directions that come with the new thing, the new kit, replacement kit, recommend that you use a plastic tool here, but if you're really careful you can get that out. So there we go. So we're ready to clean. You can see, hopefully, inside that it's in really good shape. It's not very dirty. There's a little bit of corrosion in there, but we'll take care of that with the cylinder hone. So this is another tool I purchased. This I got at Harbor Freight Tools for pretty cheap. It's called a cylinder hone, and I think this one, I can't remember the size, but it goes up to like 1.5 inches or 3 inches, something like that. So what you want to do with this is just sort of position it in here and just spin it around a few times. And what that will do is clean off the surface just enough to remove any gunk. Now get your brake cleaner out, and remember you should have eye protection and your gloves on. I like to use extra fine steel wool. I think this is 404-aught. Saturate it with a bit of brake cleaner and then clean everything off nice here. Right, the caliper is in good shape. Now we have to work on the piston. You can see it's a little gunked up here, showing that some dirt got in there from the crack, but generally it's not pitted or rusted at all. And the inside of the piston is in pretty good shape. So again, you need to remove this part of the dust boot that's kind of stuck in here, and be very careful with your implements. It's very brittle. So you can see the new boot fits down in this groove. So I'm going to continue with my steel wool. To clean this up. Alright, now we're going to rebuild the caliper, put the new inner seal and the new dust boot on. First I want to show you what happens if you don't use the right stuff. This is the new inner seal that I ruined by only using brake fluid as a lubricant to push the piston back in. As you can see, or hopefully can see, maybe I need a piece of white paper or something. There is, it got, kind of shredded and a piece got cut off of it. So that was a bad thing. It was really hard to push in with only brake fluid on it. And the second bad thing is I tore the boot during reinstallation. So you can probably see that hole right there. So don't do this. The solution is to use the right stuff. This is hydraulic brake cylinder assembly lube, and it makes this job go so much easier than just trying to use regular brake fluid. So the first step to put the caliper back together is to put the new inner seal in. This is just a dry fit. Just kind of tuck it in here in the groove. Make sure it's not twisted or anything. It'll be pretty obvious if it is. Alright, that's good. Set that aside. The next thing we have to do is put the new dust boot on the brake cylinder. So you do this from the back side. So this is the inside, and it will go back in the caliper this way. So you put the seal on in the reverse direction. The instructions that come with this, it doesn't work, the method that they describe. So this is the method that I used, and it worked fine. So put a little lubricant on here. And then be very careful about putting this on backwards. So the thin side is the outside, and it's this little groove, this little dimple that's going to end up in the groove down there. And then I just sort of position it over. You want to make sure you don't get any lubricant inside here. If you do, it's not going to fit on here. It's not going to stay on here very well. So be very careful of that. Just like that. and now you can push it down. Make sure it gets seated. In that little groove. And it seems to be good. So next I'm going to put a little more of the hydraulic lubricant on my finger and spin it around in here. Lubricate that seal nicely, and again, be sure you don't get any on the outside edge. Alright, so the seal is all lubricated, and now you should be able to push the piston in. I put a little bit more on here just to make sure. You should be able to just push it in with your hand. Just like that. Then you need to get the dust seal seated on the outside, and the best way I found to do that was just with your fingernails. Push it on. You might need a little help on the bottom side from a plastic tool. Okay, so after a little messing around, I've got the dust boot on there, and I've used just a slight breath of compressed air to push the piston out a little bit to make sure that the seal is seated in the groove as it should be, and it looks good. So now we're ready to compress it back in and get it back on the car. Alright, another quick tip for you guys. When you're putting your new pads back in, you need to be very careful that these tabs don't somehow get off on the side and tear your new dust boot. The front tabs are a little bit different, and it's easier to do that up there, but here on the rear caliper, it's not as hard. Sometimes you need to press these together with a channel lock to release some of the pressure, but basically they just slide in. The inner pad just slides in like this, and you should be good. You might need to push it in a little more. There. Alright, now we'll put it on the car. Alright, so now I want to show you about the vacuum that got created while I had the brake line off. I'm going to remove the pressure bleeder cap from the brake fluid reservoir. When you look in there, hopefully you can see that. See how the plastic has been sort of sucked in there? That's the vacuum that was created. And by plugging this up with an airtight seal, we prevented any fluid from leaking out. Just a very little, maybe a half an ounce like I said. So that's the trick, and it works wonderfully. On the rear brakes, of course, there's a lot longer distance for the fluid to travel, more piping and whatnot for it to be in, so it doesn't flow as quickly as, say, this left front would, so it's imperative that you do this trick to prevent your reservoir from leaking completely dry, which is a really bad thing. So I'm going to check the level. I'm going to add a little fluid to that, put the pressure bleeder on, and pump it up to about 20 psi, and then I'm going to go to the back corner and bleed out the fluid. Alright, so the system is back up to 20 psi. I've topped off the reservoir first and then put the pressure bleeder back on and pumped it up to 20 psi. I made sure the brake pedal is firm. And in this last step, when you're working by yourself, this basically simulates the two-person bleeder method. In that method, someone would sit in the cabin and pump the pressure up on the pedal till it was very firm and keep their foot firmly planted on the pedal, and then someone back here would open the bleeder screw and the pedal would plunge to the floor and force any air bubbles out. since I'm working alone, I don't have that option. So my friend Fedge on Bimmerfest shared a trick that he uses, and that's to pump up the pressure on your pressure bleeder. Make sure the end is the end of the tube is submersed in fluid, and then you can crack open the bleeder screw back here, and since it's under pressure it will continue to bleed. Then go in the cabin and push the pedal to the floor rapidly and firmly about 10 times to force out more fluid and hopefully more air. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So you can see a couple of air bubbles just came out there. That's about 10. So I'm going to be interested in seeing the video if more air came out. So right now we're looking at maybe about 50 or 60 milliliters of fluid that have been bled out of here, and from past experience that tells me that this line has got all nice new fresh fluid in it. So I'm going to go back up to the front, top it off again, and maybe do this procedure one more time and then put the wheel back on. Alright, we're going to do one more go of this. I've topped off the reservoir and pumped up the pedal, pumped up the pressure bleeder to 20 psi, and I'm going to crack open the bleeder and do my 10 firm pushes one more time. So I can tell you that the brake pedal is much firmer than it ever has been. I've rebuilt all 4 calipers on my car. All of them had the dust boots that were broken, and the seals might have been a little bit worn too from heat, maybe got misshaped or something. So I'm hoping that I get my nice firm brake pedal back. So I hope you found this helpful and useful. Remember, this is for entertainment purposes only. If you work on your own car, it's your responsibility to do things right. This is how I do it, and hopefully it was helpful for you. Thanks for watching.